And so these social factors could play a role in explaining some male and female differences. Also, there's the facts of gender self-segregation. So here's something very interesting happens developmentally. Males segregate with other males, females segregate with other females. For a period lasting, it depends on the culture, but say from age 4 to age 11. This self-segregation might exaggerate and enhance sex differences. It might be, for instance, as Eleanor Maccoby has proposed, that boys are slightly more aggressive than girls. But then boys go into groups of boys, and that enhances and exaggerates their aggression, while the girls' non-aggressive behavior is enhanced and exaggerated in different ways by them falling into girls' groups. So what sort of differences are we talking about when we say we're not sure of their cause? Well, one difference is one in empathy. So Simon Baron-Cohen wrote a wonderful book called The Essential Difference, where he argues that men are by nature less empathetic, women are by nature more empathetic, and that this is a core sex difference. So what do you know? Well, what's the source for this? One thing is men are more violent. Simon Baron-Cohen describes violence as the ultimate act, murder as the ultimate act of a lack of empathy. There's some relationship between how much testosterone you have in your system and how social you are. More testosterone, less social. Boys tend to be less empathetic than girls. And there's some evidence, though it's not conclusive, that boys do worse than girls on social cognition theory of mind tasks. That's what I have here, though that is quite debated. And the biggest effect, which isn't debated at all, is problems with empathy, problems with social cognition, are much more frequent in men than in women. So disorders like autism, Asperger's syndrome, conduct disorder, and psychopathy are predominantly male. And Simon Baron-Cohen suggests that basically he has this slogan where he says, to be a man is to suffer from a particularly mild form of autism, that males are just socially clueless relative to women. Final bit of trivia. This is Simon Baron-Cohen, who is a very famous developmental psychologist, but his cousin, Sacha Baron-Cohen, is far more famous. Another debate is a debate concerning sex differences in the capacity for math and science. A few years ago, there used to be a president of Harvard known as Larry Summers. There's so many reasons to hiss at this point. And Larry Summers is no longer president of Harvard for various reasons, but one reason was this quote, which included in his speculations about sex differences, in the special case of science and engineering, there are issues of intrinsic aptitude, and particularly of the variability of aptitude. He argued, or suggested, that the underrepresentation of women in the sciences, in academia, is because of an intrinsic aptitude difference. Women are, on average, less biologically predisposed to do this sort of reasoning. The variability point is that he wasn't suggesting that there's just a difference on average. In fact, he agreed that the average skills of men and women are identical. The claim is that males show more variation. This means that there's more male retarded people and more males who are just horribly bad at this, but it also means there are more male geniuses. And he suggested that this plays a role. This, as you could imagine, proved to be an extremely controversial claim. And rather than go through it, because it would take me a class to treat the pros and cons of this argument responsibly, I'm going to refer you to a wonderful debate between Steve Pinker, who was quoted earlier, and Liz Spelke, who's one of the big infant cognition people. We spoke a lot about her work earlier on in the course, and they have a wonderful debate between two of the smartest people I know on the Edge, which was done at Harvard about a year ago and is on video here. So if you're interested in sex differences and different theories about the mechanism of sex differences, this is where you should go. Finally, and a final topic, some of us, about 98%, and the numbers are very difficult to pin down. Maybe it isn't 98%, maybe it's 97, maybe it's 99. Let's say 98% of women are sexually attracted to men. About 96% of men are sexually attracted to women. And the numbers vary, and it's very difficult to estimate it properly. As you could imagine, there's all sorts of problems with this sort of research. But there's some proportion of the population that's exclusively homosexual. Some proportion of the population of men who are only attracted to other men. Some proportion of the population of women who are only attracted to other women. When people talk about sexual orientation here, it's important to realize we are not talking here about behavior. There's all sorts of reasons why somebody might have sex with somebody of the same sex. You know, there might be bored. You may, be experimenting, be whatever. The question is, what do you want to do? All things being, what sort of person, if you could be sexually or romantically involved with any person, who would it be? And most people are heterosexual. There's a considerable amount that varies cross-culturally of people who are bisexual. But the real puzzle is exclusive homosexuality. So why? Well, nobody knows. We know some reasons. Some answers are probably not right. It is not the case, almost certainly, maybe there are some exceptions, but it's not the case that people choose their sexual orientation. I'm not going to do this in this room, but if I ask people to raise their hands as to how many people decided who to become sexually attracted to, very few people would. Part of the issue rises in the fact that people who are gay are often extremely discriminated against, and they have no wish to be gay. They might even think it's morally wrong for them to be that way. That makes it implausible that their sexual orientation is a conscious choice. What about experience after puberty? So there's a view that keeps coming up over and over again in the literature that people who are gay have in some sense been seduced by other people, or something happened to them afterwards. This seems unlikely. There are, in particular, the seeds of sexual orientation later on in life seem to show up quite early in life. Again, the studies are sort of suspect, but there's some reason to believe that people who are gay and people who are straight are different long before they hit puberty with regard to their sexual and romantic fantasies. You would now expect me to say, well, being gay and being straight is built in, it's hardwired. None of these stories seem right, it seems to be built in. And the answer to that is, sort of. So, if you do the standard behavioral genetic tests, and you by now know how to do them, you look for differences between monozygotic and dizygotic twins, you do the adoption comparison between adopted siblings and biological siblings, the answer is yes. You find that there is some sort of genetic predisposition towards homosexuality. But it can't be entirely genetic. One reason why it can't be entirely genetic is if I'm gay and I have an identical twin, the odds that my identical twin will be gay is about 50%. Those are very high odds compared to the average in the population. But if it was truly genetic, entirely genetic, what should the number be? 100%. He's my clone. He should be exactly as I am, and it's not. So we know then that some sort of experience, possibly prenatal experience, is what explains it. Why is it so? I said before this is a huge puzzle. Why is it such a huge puzzle? Well, exclusive homosexuality is an evolutionary mystery. Again, do not think that this carries any moral weight to it. What it does mean, though, is that it doesn't seem to follow as a biological adaptation. The puzzle is not, why is it that some men have sex with men? That's not a big puzzle. Maybe they have sex with men as some sort of recreational thing, or pair bonding, or whatever. That's not the puzzle. The puzzle is, why are there some men who don't want to have sex with women? Similarly, why are there some women who don't want to have sex with men? From an evolutionary adaptive standpoint, you would think that the genes that give rise to such a behavior would be weeded out, because creatures with that behavior typically, putting aside modern technology, don't have offspring. And that's what makes it such a puzzle. So your reading response for this week is solve that puzzle.